My mother-in-law slapped my 6-year-old daughter across the face at Christmas dinner and called her a spoiled little brat. I called the police from the table before anyone could say another word. What happened next changed everything. It started the way it always did, with my husband's family acting like I should be grateful just to be in the room. We had been married for 5 years. 5 years of me driving 45 minutes each way to their house in Naperville every major holiday. 5 years of cooking dishes nobody touched because my mother-in-law had already made the real food. 5 years of my daughter, Poppy, being treated like a guest in a house where every photo on the wall was of my husband and his sister, taken before I existed. I want to be clear about something. I am not someone who makes drama. I am a pediatric nurse. I work 12-hour shifts. I bring my daughter to preschool at 6:45 in the morning. I manage our bills and our appointments and our life while my husband, Grayson, works in commercial insurance and travels 2 weeks out of every month. I am the one who keeps everything moving. I always have been, and for 5 years I kept my mouth shut at that dinner table because I thought that was what a good wife did. But there is a limit. And my mother-in-law found it. It was Christmas Eve. Poppy was sitting between me and my husband at the table. She had been so well behaved all evening, which if you know a 6-year-old, you know is a genuine achievement. She had sat through Grace, through the adults talking over each other for an hour, through my sister-in-law Becca refilling her wine glass so many times I lost count. Poppy asked for the mashed potatoes, politely. "May I have some more, Grandma?" And my mother-in-law passed them to her, but when Poppy took the serving spoon, a little bit fell off the side onto the tablecloth. It was a spoonful of mashed potatoes on a tablecloth. My mother-in-law looked at it for one long second, and then she reached across and slapped Poppy on the hand. Not a tap, a slap, hard enough that Poppy's arm recoiled and knocked her glass of apple juice over. "That is how accidents happen," my mother-in-law said. "You are old enough to know better. Your mother has never taught you a single thing about being in a proper home." Poppy looked at her hand. Then she looked at me with these enormous brown eyes. She didn't cry. She just waited. Like she was waiting to see whether I was going to do something. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911 before my husband finished saying my name. "Don't," Grayson said. "Don't do this. It was nothing." "You have reached 911. What is your emergency?" "Yes. I need to report a physical assault on a minor." "Where at?" I gave them the address, my mother-in-law's address, on Christmas Eve. The table went completely silent. My sister-in-law Becca started talking very fast about how I was being insane, how it was a correction, how children need discipline. My father-in-law sat at the head of the table with his fork halfway to his mouth and didn't move. Grayson grabbed my wrist. I moved my wrist away from his hand and said quietly, "Do not touch me right now." He let go. I took Poppy onto my lap and kept the phone to my ear and gave the dispatcher everything she asked for. When she said officers would arrive in approximately 12 minutes, I said thank you and I stayed on the line. My mother-in-law found her voice somewhere around minute 3. "You are calling the police on my family on Christmas Eve. Do you have any idea what you're doing? You are unhinged. You have always been unhinged. I told Grayson before he married you." "Ma'am," I said, "I'd recommend not saying anything else right now. Excuse me? I'm still on the line with 911. They can hear you." She stopped talking. Grayson was staring at me like I was someone he had never seen before. Maybe I was. Maybe I had always been this person and it had taken 5 years to get here. The officers arrived in 9 minutes, 2 of them, a man and a woman, very professional, very calm. They separated us and took statements. I showed them the mark on Poppy's hand, which was still red. I showed them the photos I had taken before they arrived. I had taken them about 30 seconds after I hung up with dispatch, while Becca was still making her speech about discipline. The officer took them and said they were useful documentation. My mother-in-law gave her statement and kept using the word correction. The officer explained to her that in Illinois, a grandparent does not have the legal authority to physically discipline a grandchild against a parent's wishes, and that regardless intent, a visible mark on a child was taken seriously. My mother-in-law said she had never been treated like a criminal in her life. The officer said she understood that, and that she also needed to understand her options. They did not arrest her, but they filed an incident report, and they told me I had every right to pursue it further. Grayson came to me after they left. His face was the color of old ash. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "She hit our daughter." "It was a hand slap. You've given Poppy a timeout that was more traumatic than that." Something shifted in my chest. Something that had been wobbling for a long time finally fell. "A timeout," I said slowly, "is something a parent gives their child. Not something your mother gets to do to my kid at the dinner table while telling her I've failed as a parent. She's old-fashioned. She doesn't mean—" "I know exactly what she means," I said. "She means it every time. And you have never once told her to stop." He didn't have anything to say to that, because it was true and he knew it was true, and we both knew he was going to keep not saying anything. It's the same season, and he had always not said anything because his mother scared him more than losing me did. I took Poppy's coat off the hook by the door. I put it on her. I picked up my bag. "Mommy, are we leaving?" Poppy asked. "Yes, baby." "What about the presents?" "We'll do presents at home." She took my hand and we walked out the front door. My husband was still standing in the hallway behind us. He didn't follow us to the car. I drove to a Marriott 15 minutes away and I booked a room. It was $240 a night because it was Christmas Eve. I paid it without blinking. I ordered Poppy a grilled cheese and fruit from room service, and I ran her a bath, and I sat on the edge of the tub while she splashed around, and I kept my face very still until she couldn't see it. When she was asleep, I cried in the bathroom shower with the water running so she couldn't hear me. Not because I was sad, because I was so unbelievably tired, and because I realized sitting there that I had been tired for years and had kept calling it something else. I called my best friend Dara from the bathroom floor. She picked up on the second ring because she always picks up, even on Christmas Eve. I told her what happened. I told her all of it. She said, "Tell me where you are." I told her. "I'll be there in 40 minutes, she said. She brought wine and Christmas cookies from her own kitchen, and she sat on the floor of my hotel room next to the bed where Poppy was sleeping, and we talked until 2 in the morning. She was the one who said quietly, "Are you finally done?" And I knew exactly what she was asking. "Yes," I said. "I think I've been done for a while." She nodded. "Okay, then let's figure out what comes next." I called a family law attorney first thing the morning of December 26th. I had done some research the night before while Dara was sleeping. The attorney's name was Michelle, a woman who had been practicing in the Chicago area for 18 years and whose reviews were unanimous on one point. She did not lose custody cases. Her office was closed for the holiday, but her emergency line wasn't, and when I called and explained what had happened, she called me back within the hour. She was direct and clear, and she did not waste either of our time. "The incident report is useful," she said. "Photographs are useful. I'd recommend you send me copies of everything today. Do not go back to that house. Do not communicate with your in-laws directly, and document anything that happens going forward." I had already started documenting. I had a folder on my phone by 8 a.m. Grayson called me 6 times on the 26th. I let them all go to voicemail. He texted me, "Can we please just talk? This is getting out of hand. You're scaring me." I read it, put my phone face down, and turned back to Poppy, who was eating a waffle and watching Bluey on the hotel TV. On the 27th, I drove to our house while Grayson was at his parents'. I knew he was there because his location was still shared with me on his phone, a detail I noted quietly and told my attorney about. And I packed what I needed. Poppy's things, my documents, my laptop, 2 weeks of clothes for both of us. Dara had offered me her spare room and I took it. On the 28th, Grayson came home to find half the closet empty and a note on the kitchen counter that said, "I've retained an attorney. Please communicate through her going forward. I love you, but I am not doing this anymore." He showed up at Dara's that night. I watched through the window. Dara answered the door. I heard him say he just wanted to talk. Dara said that I wasn't taking visitors and that if he wanted to communicate with me, he had my attorney's number. He stood on the porch for a long moment, then he left. He texted me at midnight. "This is not what I wanted." I typed back, "I know. I didn't want it either, but I needed you to protect your daughter and you didn't." He didn't reply. I filed for separation in early January. Illinois requires a 6-month separation period before a divorce can be finalized, which my attorney explained in clearly. What mattered in the immediate term was a parenting agreement, which she filed for alongside the petition. Grayson hired a lawyer. Of course he did. And his lawyer's first move was to argue that Poppy had a right to maintain a relationship with her paternal grandparents, and that restricting access was punitive and not in the child's best interest. My attorney filed our response with the incident report, the photos, and a statement from Poppy's pediatrician, who had examined her hand on December 26th and documented the mark. She also included a written account from the 911 dispatcher confirming the nature of the call. The guardian ad litem appointed by the court was a woman in her 50s, who spoke to Poppy in a child-friendly room with soft furniture and asked her open-ended questions while I waited in the hall. I don't know exactly what Poppy said. I know when she came out, she walked straight into my arms and asked if we could go to Panera. We went to Panera. I got her a mac and cheese, and I got a coffee I could barely taste, and I sat across from my daughter and thought, whatever it takes. The hearing was on a cold Thursday in February. Grayson and I sat on opposite sides of the courtroom for the first time in our lives, and I kept my eyes forward. The judge was a man who had clearly heard every variation of every story like ours. He reviewed the documentation. He asked questions. He noted for the record that a physical mark had been documented by a medical professional and that an incident report had been filed and that the respondent, my mother-in-law, had not disputed the physical contact, only characterized it as a disciplinary gesture. My attorney stood and said, Your Honour, a 6-year-old child was struck by an adult with no guardianship authority in front of her mother and sustained a visible injury. The characterization of that act does not change its nature. The judge granted the order of protection. My mother-in-law was prohibited from having unsupervised contact with Poppy. My sister-in-law Becca, who the court found had made statements to a third party suggesting she would assist in circumventing the order, was included in the restriction. Grayson was granted parenting time every other weekend, supervised by a neutral third party until further review. Because of his failure to intervene during the incident and his subsequent failure to acknowledge the severity of it, he didn't look at me when the judgment was read. I didn't look at him either. Outside on the courthouse steps, the February wind was brutal. I pulled my coat tighter and thought, oddly, about a conversation I'd had with Grayson when we were dating. We were at a rooftop bar in Lincoln Park on a summer night, and he had said, very sincerely, that he admired how strong I was. You handle everything, he said. Nothing breaks you. I had been flattered. I had thought it was a compliment. I understand now that it wasn't. It was a preview. He was telling me what he expected. He just dressed it up to sound like admiration. My attorney touched my arm. That went well, she said. Go home and rest. Dara was waiting for me back at her apartment with takeout from the Thai place we'd been ordering from since college. We ate on her couch and watched a home renovation show and didn't talk about any of it, which was exactly what I needed. Poppy was at a play date. When Dara picked her up and brought her back, she came in and said, Mommy, can we get a Christmas tree? It was February. Next December, I said. That's so far away, she said, and collapsed dramatically onto the couch between us, and Dara and I looked at each other over her head, and I felt, for the first time in months, something that was close to okay. The financial side was less simple. Grayson and I had a joint account and 2 separate accounts and a mortgage on a house in Oak Park that we had bought 3 years earlier. The down payment had come equally from both of us. The monthly payments came from the joint account, which both of us contributed to proportionally. His contribution was about 40%. Mine was 60% because I made more. I made $60,000 a year as a nurse, and he made $64,000 in insurance. He had always seemed fine with this arrangement while we were together. He became less fine with it when it came to the asset division. His lawyer argued that the house should be sold and the proceeds split 50-50. My attorney countered that my larger financial contribution was documented and that an equitable distribution should reflect actual contribution. We submitted 3 years of bank statements. In the end, Grayson agreed to a settlement that gave me 58% of the net sale proceeds. We listed the house in April. It sold in 3 weeks, which is Oak Park in a decent spring market. After the mortgage was paid off, I walked away with enough for a solid down payment on a 2-bedroom in Evanston, close to the school I had already chosen for Poppy's kindergarten year. I signed the lease on a Wednesday afternoon in May. The landlord, an older woman who had owned the building for 20 years, handed me the keys and said, "You seem like you've been through something." "A little bit," I said. "Good tenants always have been," she said and patted my hand and left. I stood alone in the empty apartment and listened to the silence of it. No in-laws, no walking on eggshells, no second-guessing every sentence before I said it out loud, just empty rooms waiting to become ours. In June, Poppy started a transitional kindergarten program at her new school. On the first day, she wore a pink dress she had picked out herself and carried a backpack shaped like a strawberry. She walked into the classroom without looking back. Her teacher told me at pickup that she had made 2 friends by lunch and had corrected another child's crayon colour choice with what the teacher described as very polite but absolute confidence. That's my daughter. Grayson's visits with Poppy were stilted at first. She would come home quiet, sometimes clingy, and I would run her a bath and make her hot chocolate and not push. Slowly they settled into something more comfortable. He was not a bad father, he was a weak husband. Those are different things, and I had to let Poppy find her own relationship with him without my feelings in the way. One Saturday in August, he returned her from a visit and stood at my door a little longer than usual. "She's doing well," he said. "She is. I've been seeing a therapist." He looked at the door frame. "She has me looking at some things, about my family, about how I was raised." I nodded. I didn't say anything. "I know I let you both down," he said. "I know saying that doesn't change anything." "No," I said. "It doesn't." He nodded. He turned to go. "But it's something," I said. And I meant it in the way that it was a small thing and also the first honest thing he had said to me in a long time. "Take care of yourself, Grayson." He didn't look back either. He walked to his car and I closed the door. Poppy was behind me in the hallway, holding her strawberry backpack. "Was that Daddy?" "Yeah." "Is he okay?" "He's working on it," I said. She considered this for a moment with the philosophical gravity that 6-year-olds occasionally produce out of nowhere. "Okay," she said. "Can we have pizza tonight?" We had pizza. We sat on the living room floor because I still hadn't bought a proper dining table, and Poppy set up her Lego set in the middle and built while she ate, narrating the whole time, and I sat across from her and watched it and thought about how she had once waited for me to do something, with those enormous brown eyes in a room full of adults who were not going to help her. I did something. And every single night since then, in this apartment that is loud with just the 2 of us, I am glad that I did.